All righty. I'd like to welcome everyone today. My name is Julie Adams. I'm a regional consultant at the Kentucky Center for Mathematics. And today I wanted to present on choral counting and counting collections. These are two very important routines that can be implemented easy into the elementary classroom. And so we would just like to expand on these today. These mini sessions came out of things that we would like to add into our current trainings, but we felt like that we didn't have enough time. So we would just wanted to add these as mini sessions. So today we're going to be looking at this influential book that is inspiring to us as elementary teachers to experiences the joys and rewards of regularly using, as I stated before, these two routines called choral counting and counting collections. Teachers are using these in their classrooms, both virtually now and in partnership with families, now that we're having to be at home learning. But I just wanted you to think about how it paints a vision for how students can deeply and creatively engage with the ideas of number operations and mathematical sense making just through counting. And we want to think about, the research says that when we support each other in a whole group setting, in a counting situation, that we'll be able to see the relationships of patterns, and we'll have the opportunity to build on someone else's ideas, and we'll have the opportunity to learn and ask questions about the mathematics that's taken place. All right, so the book this is sort of a springboard is called Choral Counting and Counting Collections, Transforming the Pre-K through 5 Math Classroom. Okay, Pam. You can switch the slide. Okay, so we want to look at today what is choral counting, and we want to focus on what that looks like and what it is. And choral counting is a fun, engaging instructional activity in which it's designed to leverage the children's mathematical thinking as they work together to count and dig in and look at the patterns of number sequences. So a teacher is going to start to facilitate a count in a whole group situation with her students in her classroom. And she's going to tell them how they're going to count, and then they're going to record their count in a purposeful organization. And that's something to think about too, is how the teacher is going to record the count. But we'll get to that in a little bit, thinking about how you're going to organize it. But the teacher then, after she records their count, she's going to invite the students, to think about what they notice about the numbers. And then she's going to facilitate a conversation that builds on the student ideas and that supports the students to reason about mathematics as they engage in others' ideas. It might be a counting situation in which some of them are counting sequence that they're familiar with, such as counting by fives, starting with 5. And it may lead to something in another situation where they're going to start counting at 6 and then count by 5s, and the teacher is going to record those. And as well, as we get on into older grades, then it may not even be counting whole numbers. It might be counting by minutes, or it might be counting by fractions, or counting by decimals. So you can see how this can be, this instructional routine can be used with older grades as well. But particularly today, that would be another session if you're interested in, and we'll talk about how it could be used in 3rd through 5th grade. But let us know if you want to do that. But today we're going to focus on particularly just K through 2. But students and teachers are going to engage in the choral counting together, and we're going to try to get them intrigued by what they're seeing about the patterns, how they might repeat, the regularities, and there's ongoing thinking and conversations that are going to propel the teachers to engage in this activity over and over, and finding new ways to adapt and learn as the students are exploring. Okay, if you could switch the slide, please. All right, so we want to think about the big ideas, the big mathematical ideas of choral counting and why they're important. First of all, just in this choral counting sequence that we're all going to be counting together, and we can, it's going to think about honing in on the 3 aspects of number, especially when we combine the choral counting with the counting collection. We're going to have all 3 aspects of the verbal, quantitative, and symbolic. It also supports kids in number names in order of the counting sequence and coordinating the number word with a written symbol. It can be counting by ones or counting by groups. And it has the kids thinking about the relative size and quantity, as well as developing place value and skip counting concepts. There's patterns and features of number that are often kids don't always think about because we haven't asked them or invited them to think about these patterns and sequences before. But to think about, I have the word equity in red, and I want to think about how these activities help us enact our commitments to equity. And we know that sense of belonging and investment of kids in the classroom, of being seen and known and heard by their teachers and their classmates, how that is just fundamental when we're creating this rapport of family and where children they feel welcome in our classroom and they can flourish. But also because these activities are at the forefront of student sense making and they can cultivate a joy for doing mathematics and kids are engaged and they can be powerful tools for teachers to counter these narrow views about math is only during math time. So we want kids to see that math is other places as well. It's all around us. And we don't want them to see that it's in a disconnect from our homes and our lives and our communities. So we want to hone in on kids' interests, and we also want to touch base and connect with families at home. All right, on the next slide, we are going to look at a classroom, and we're just going to see what it looks like. So the teacher, this is the very first time that they've done a choral count. So she's spending a little time at the beginning talking about one voice and how they're all going to be combined together. And so she stops to try to help them to predict what the count may be. So this is what it looks like in a first grade classroom in September.
When we do the Pledge of Allegiance, we say in one voice, right? We all say together so that no one's going super fast and no one's going super slow. We're going to say together as a class. And when we do that, I'm going to be writing the numbers down with my pen. So right now, I want you to think about counting by twos. Some of you might have counted by twos before, right? I want you to think to yourself, just you can close your eyes if you need to, think about the first three numbers. If you were counting by twos, and we're going to do this with zero level voice, so think about those first three numbers when counting by twos. I'm going to give you a minute to everyone to quietly think to yourself. Okay, open your eyes if you haven't closed. Who can tell me those first three numbers? Who can tell me? Isaiah, what do you think those first three numbers are?
6, 4.
Oh, go ahead.
2, 4, and 6.
Put your thumb to your chest if you agree with Isaiah. Okay, thank you. So I'm going to go ahead and write those up here, the first three numbers we have. So I'm going to write up here. So here's 2, 4, 6. Perfect. Okay, so let's practice saying those numbers together so we can try to sing in one voice, right? Okay, go.
Have a good one. See you then.
6. Oh, I already hear you getting started. Okay, this time we're going to go one, right? We're going to stay with Mrs. Tea's pen, okay? Thumbs up if you're ready. Awesome. Okay, here we go. 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14. Stop. Oh. What number do you think is going to come next? What number do you think is going to come next? Zachariah, what number do you think is going to come next? 16. Can you tell me? Oh, JT's saying me too. I'm seeing a lot of the green. Can you tell me, Zachariah, how did you know that it was going to be 16? Can you just use your words and tell me?
6, because there's a 2 and 4, and then there's 6.
So you see the 2. Are you seeing?
And then I added a 1.
Oh, so you're seeing the 2s right here and the 4s. And you saw the 6 up here, so you think it's going to be 16. And you said the 1 over here in the 10s column. Okay, let's try that. Let's go back to 10 and we're going to count on, okay? 10, 12, 14, 16, 18, 20, 22, 24, 26, 28, 30. 32, 34, 36, 38, 40. Are we skipping? We're going to stop right there. I'm going to put a box right here.
I know.
I want you guys to make a prediction. I want you to make a prediction. I want you to think, what is going to go in that box right there? quietly to yourself. When you have a prediction, can you show me a quiet thumb to your chest? Thank you. You have a prediction. Lisa's still thinking, Jordan. What do you think's going to go in that box? Who's saying what do you think's going to go in there? 48? Okay. Remember, if you agree, I see Audrey's agreeing. If you have a different answer, can you just show me your thumb to your chest? And Nav, do you have a different answer? Oh, you're agreeing. Okay. Okay, so everyone's saying 48. Who's saying, why do you think that 48 is going to go in that box?
Because that's what it is.
Oh, so all of them. And you added a 4? Why did you add a 4?
Because that's for
Who else said 48? Who else said 48? JT? How do you know that that's going to be 48? Why do you think that's going to be 48?
Because after 3 is 4.
After 3 is 4? What do you mean after 3 is 4? Can you explain that to me? After 3 is 4? After what 3, JT?
4 is 3.
It's okay. JT, are you talking about this 3 right here? So after this 3 would be 4? Let's go ahead and keep counting. We're going to start at 40 and we're still counting by 2s, okay? Here we go. 40.
42, 44, 46, 48, 50.
Okay, you can stop right there, Pam.
Okay, I wasn't sure. Sorry.
That's okay. Thank you. All right, we just want to have a brief conversation with you to see what questions you might have at this point, or what did you notice about what they were doing in the video, what the teacher was doing, what the students were doing.
I liked how she was stopping and having them make predictions about what was happening next at various points.
Right. So she was stopping and having them estimate, like you said, and make the predictions and just having conversations about it. The reason why I chose this video, there's lots of videos that demonstrate the choral counting. But the reason why I chose this one, because this was the beginning video. This was, like I said, in the September of the first grade year, and this was the first time that they had tried this. So that's another reason why she is stopping more frequently, I think, than she would normally, to assess what her kids know and to help them think about the skip counting process. Because I'm thinking that this is September and they might not have skip counted a lot by twos, especially recording in the higher numbers. Did anybody notice anything else? You guys are quiet today. Okay, so Lisa says the teacher is recording the count, and that's important, is that there's always going to be a record of the account, or a count of the count, I should say, to record it. One thing is, and then she's going to further ask them after they've recorded the count, what patterns and structures do they notice within the numbers? And I want you to think about how this develops the concept of place value as well, because she's asking them about the numbers. They're saying the number 1, and she reinforces the place value.
It's right there in there. It's in the bronze thing.
Actually, Pam, if you could skip to slide 6, and then we'll skip back. Yes, thank you. So this is an example of, one more. Go back one more, please.
Oh, this.
Sorry. If you'll go to slide, you probably can't see the numbers. Slide 6.
Okay, sorry. No, I can't see the numbers, so.
Okay, I can tell you if you can go backwards.
Am I going backwards?
No, you're going forwards. I wanted to show a picture of what it might look like, a choral count. This was a picture of that right there. Yes, thank you. This was a picture that a teacher had drawn, a participant that was in a choral counting conference. And this was an example of, this is starting at 6 and counting by 5s. So if you can see, this count went 6, 11, 16. And then the teacher had recorded what the students had noticed. So they noticed from 6, 11, 16, all in the top row, 21, etc. There was a jump of 5. And then they noticed that from the bottom row, from 6 to 36 to 66 to 96, there was always a jump of 30. And so they were able to estimate at this point what it looked like, what was going to happen with the patterns of number. I also liked this visual because it also shows the jumps on a number line and what that might look like, and lots of patterns to pull out there as well. And you can see what it looks like if we had these quantities on a 10 frame. And so there's 6 dots with 5 dots added, and we have the color change as well, so they can see what's happening there. So I like this visual because it has the quantity and has different, the quantity embedded within as well. And also on the number line, it can show those measures of jumps. But I just wanted to show you that these are what we're going to pull out, and kids will even notice what's happening to the numbers diagonally. So we want to keep them just noticing the structure and patterns of number. Pam, if you could go back one more now to slide 5. If you could go backwards a slide. Thank you. Okay, so I want to think about some activities to promote choral counting. And in your, and I don't know whether you had time to even open it yet, but we've created a PDF document of some resources that you may want to use. And so on these resources are activities and situations in which you might present in your classroom. So you might count by 1 starting at a certain number. You might count by, it has counting by ounces if you want to do that, and do pounds to convert measurements. You can count by minutes, converting hours and minutes. But we also have some whole number tasks as well that start out at the beginning. So you might count forward or backwards. So you may start at 80 and count backwards by 5s and see what that looks like. But I just wanted to show you the big mathematical ideas, that it supports fluency with the counting sequence, and you can notice the repetition of the base 10 number system. And so when you're thinking about how you're going to present a choral counting situation with your class, you want to think about what mathematical concept do you want to pull out, or do you want to enhance on this day? So there's also within these, there's a planning sheet for you to think about what big mathematical idea do I want them to be thinking about. And then within that, you can do a sample recording of what number you may want to begin with, and what you may want to end with. And if you want to increment, if you want to go forward, if you want to decrement, if you want to go backwards. So just in planning, you want to think about, so for instance, if you wanted to think about developing the counting skills and you wanted to think about the composition of our base 10 number system, then you might start at 16 and count by 10 and record that. So just thinking about how you would plan and the patterns that the students may notice. And also within this entire set, we're getting ready to switch to the counting collection activities. There's also the same planning, accounting, collection activities resources in here as well. We also, every time we want to think about what we're planning with our kids, we want to think about attending to what they're doing at the moment, as you are whenever they're doing a choral counting routine. And you want to think about, you want to decide what you're going to do with that information about where your kids are, and then reflect and plan accordingly. All right, Pam, thank you. And if you would, keep that up though. If you would go to slide 7, what is accounting collection? So the next activity that we're going to think about is, what is counting collections? So counting collections is going to start with, a teacher is going to have different items in the classroom grouped together for kids to count. And so within this, you're going to have several different collections of items to count. And you can have particular items for a particular group of kids. But I just want to explain briefly. You can see here that they started with this activity with these, what I call aquarium beads in a vase. And then they ended up with how many beads there were. And this was how they began to organize the beads. And then they grouped them, I think by hundreds. And then there ended up being 1,312. But this was started out as an adult activity that teachers did at a PLC, so they could practice the choral counting, and they could really be in the situation of what their kids would be struggling with and how they would be adapting to the situation. Now, if you're kindergarten, you're definitely not going to give your kids, a collection of 1,000 probably of anything. But you're going to think about the collection that you want your kids to count within their counting range. You want to push them just a little beyond their counting range to think about just so they can have some productive struggle and you can see how they might count or organize the collections. So thinking about start off, I said you're gonna choose a collection that's gonna be a bit out of reach for your students. So you wanna think about too, what big mathematical idea do you want? For example, if you want your kindergartners, if they're having trouble with maybe the teen numbers, maybe you may push it to 20s or 30s so they can see that pattern again. They can count beyond the teen numbers and they can see that pattern start over again at 20 in the 20s. So just thinking about what you want your kids to do and what they're capable of, and then push them a little bit beyond so they can have these mathematical understandings. Also, I want you to think about too is lots of times we engage students with something that they're interested in, right? So there's lots of things that kids are interested in that we may have them count. Whatever if they're interested in Pokemon cards, so they may be counting those. If they're interested in dinosaurs, they may be counting those collections. So as you're going to create these different collections for kids to count, you may be looking in your kids' toy boxes for old toys. That's where I got a lot of my items for counting collections. Yard sales and the Dollar Tree is amazing for thinking about things for counting collections. But if you don't want to spend a lot of money, just go outside and have them pick up the leaves right now on the playground or anything like that to count and organize and to see how the kids begin to structure their numbers and count. If you'll move to the next slide, please, Pam. I feel like I'm talking really fast. I apologize. All right, so thinking about the big mathematical concepts that are involved in counting collections. Whoops. We wanted them to see, again, the number names in the order of the counting sequence, and we want them to be able to count by ones and counting in groups. So kids may begin to start to count, hopefully they'll start to organize these collections in a way that makes sense to them. For an example, there was an activity a year before last in a 5th grade classroom and they were counting pumpkins. It was about this time of year. Now these were 5th grade. And so they were doing lots of activities, math activities with these pumpkins. And one of them was they were going to count the seeds, the pumpkin seeds. And so they had a huge sheet of paper and they had their seeds out. And one thing that I noticed was a lot of the kids were grouping them by 5s. And they were just putting them in groups of 5 and they were trying to count them, all of these, 300 and some pumpkin seeds by 5s. And so one thing I began to notice is we have conversations with the teacher is, first of all, I thought, well, maybe 10s would be easier. But as it went on, the entire group was basically grouping by 5. Some of them are grouping by 10s, but we came to the conclusion was that they hadn't had the opportunities to group and count collections before by 5th grade. And they were tending to only use tools and, for example, organizational tools like 10 frames and hundreds charts, only when they were asked to use them in their curriculum. So they had become very procedural for them. And so they weren't thinking about the actual counting in groups and how much easier after they counted them by 5s or 10s to group them into hundreds and how they could count much more quickly. So thinking about when we start these activities early on, it begins to become this innate nature within kids to see these, thinking about these place value concepts. And we're going to watch a video that even kindergartners can see, thinking about how many 10s are in 100. But we want to keep thinking about lots of aspects of counting that are important: one-to-one correspondence, cardinality, figuring out and finding how many, and the structure of keeping track. And the main thing is developing this 10ness and understanding the operations of addition and subtraction as we move forward. We can give kids opportunities after they've counted their collections. So 2nd grade, maybe we're working on subtraction and word problems. So we've had them count this collection. And now we might say, well, what if you counted this collection of 300 and some cars, but you lost 50 of them or 54, and how many might be left? So we can use this counting collection as an operation. Okay, if you can move on, please. So we're going to move to what does it look like? Again, we're going to watch a brief video As you can see on this slide, there are pictures of how the kids had arranged them. But we're going to watch a few minutes of this video of a kindergarten classroom.
My name is Stephanie Latimer, and today's lesson is counting collections with my kindergartners. They are given a collection and some organizational tools, and they're asked to count whatever's in the collection. And then they are asked to record how they counted and what they counted. So I'm going to give you one thing to think about today before you go count your collections. Are you ready to hear the one thing?
Yeah.
It's with your recording. So as a teacher, I like being able to just have a short mini lesson that's like, you could try this today. So once you've counted your collection, I want you to think about your recording, Salman. And I'm noticing a lot of people are recording like this. So they're putting 10, 20, 30, and then they have their ones here and they're saying 31, 32, 33. And that's great. That's a great way to record how you counted. That's how you're saying your count. But I want to ask you something about this. Is there actually 20 things inside this cup?
No.
Show me on your fingers how many things are actually inside that cup. Yeah. So another way, go ahead and put your hands back in your cookie jar. Another way to show that, and I've noticed a couple people do this before, record like this. They put 10, 10, 10, and then below it you can tell me how you counted. 10, 20, 30, like that. Can you try that for me today? Yeah. If you would like to? Okay. So let's go over counting collections really quickly. I have a partner. You have to have collections that are the right level for your kids. We had collections from 150 up to beyond 300. There's little like pom-poms from the craft store, marbles, baseball cards, any little thing that you can fit into a Ziploc bag that they can organize, they'll be able to count. You and your partner need to decide how we're gonna count. So you might have to play rock, paper, scissors about that. Either by 5s or by 10s is your choice today. Did I say 2s?
No.
We're just gonna do 5s or 10s today, okay? Sound good? So did you agree on what you're going to count by?
Yes.
What did you decide?
10s.
You're going to count by 10s? Learning is constantly happening. No matter what you do, they're going to be learning. Either they're learning how to work with someone else, or they're learning how to write numbers, or they're learning how to count, rote count, or they're learning how to organize something mathematically.
You can count by 2s on one plate.
You could, to make a 10?
Yeah.
Tell me what you mean by that.
Like, you grab 2 and you say 2, 6, 8, 10.
Aha, so you could count by 2s, but make groups of 10. Do you feel comfortable sharing that with the class? So Caleb had a really good idea is it because you like counting by 2s?
Is that enough?
Yes, and I'll just explain since we're running out of time. It's 3:59. They go on to have this great conversation about the kindergartners decide that they can group these 10 groups of 10 into 100. And it's really amazing. And they're creating their own record. So they're drawing after they organize their count. Then they have to record their count and make a drawing of it. And so these two students, if we continue watching it, they have 2 different ways of recording how they've recorded this 10 group of 10s to make 100. And it's just really neat to watch how they've recorded them. And also I want to think about what the teacher is doing. Would anybody like to comment on what the teacher is doing during this time?
I really like how the teacher is like asking leading questions so they can explain their thinking.
Right. So she's asking those engaging questions. She's not telling them what to do in a sense, but she's just facilitating the conversations, right? And the teacher's work is actually on the forefront of what type of collection, the number of the quantity of the collection that she's going to give the kids, and the questions that she's going to ask them to try to pull out those mathematical ideas that she may want them to see. And also, then it's on then the teacher's thinking about at the end of the lesson, then what is she going to do to pull them back in a group conversation? So she is focusing on, she's moving around between the different groups and seeing what mathematical ideas are being brought out, or what structures that the kids are that they're coming up with, like the little boy who decided that he could count by twos to get to 10, right? So that's a huge ordeal. I mean, that's a big deal thinking about that. And then the student that realized they could count by tens, that they were just going to take these tens that he had made on a plate and then put them together to make 100. And so then the teacher is going to have a conversation at the end, thinking about bringing all these mathematical ideas together, and then thinking about what is she going to do next? What opportunity is she going to have for the kids, and what quantity are they going to count next? Anybody else? So we want to think about this is carefully planned, and thinking about and then carefully reflected upon how the teacher is going to incorporate these learning activities for her kids and the count. Pam, if you'll go to the next slide. Also in the resources, I have some printable resources that we've just shown about counting collection tips for getting started. Thinking about if you have experienced counters, if you have not so much experienced counters, the things that you might have them count, and how you might prepare your materials. So you're going to have different items to count in the room, maybe different bags or boxes of items to count, and you may just organize them maybe at a table. And so if kids are finished with their count and some kids are still counting, they may be able to start on another quantity to count as well. So there's just some tips in there about planning and what it might look like in your classroom and where you might get materials. And lots of, the thing that I have difficulty most with is I want to jump in and help the kids, and I really have to think about covering my mouth and not talking so much. But the sample of questions you might ask during counting collections is one of the, is what has been included in your PDF. And so thinking about prompting questions, like you might ask them, what were you doing yesterday to keep track? Why did you decide to put those in cups of 15? Or what are you going to do with all those loose ones? Just different things, different sample of questions that you might ask to prompt the thinking of the kids, which without leading the witness, so to speak. Also, there is a way that there's just a recording sheet for kids to record how they might record their count. And you might have them do it in a journal if it's an ongoing activity. That was something that I like to do, was keep it in a journal, and then I could see over time, from the beginning of the year to the end of the year, how sophisticated their strategies had become. Whether it was just writing numerals to structuring groups of number. Also, there's an anecdotal record sheet that you could make notes on their recording strategies and other notes, whether they counted by ones, counted by tens, or whatever quantity they were counting by. Okay, Pam, if you would skip to the next slide, please. This is a virtual resource that comes with a book from Stenhouse Publishing, and it has a choral counting planning tool, and so you can arrange a title of a count and the number that you're going to count by, and then it will arrange. You can go ahead and print out that. You can print out that counting sequence, so you don't have to do that, or you could just project it on your smartboard. So if you don't want to record the count, you can do it there. It will already be there, and it can do it as the kids say the count as well, and then it will end at that number. And then you can record on there what the patterns and the structures that they see within that count. Also, you could do it, if you wanted to do it virtually, you could use this with your kids as well. So I just wanted to show you that this is something that you could use virtually that's already set up for you. And if you'll do one more, I realize I'm 5 minutes over already. So the last thing that I want to leave you with is just giving kids the opportunity to count everything and count all of the time. And you will see that these big mathematical ideas and concepts will come out organically, and kids will just learn this. We won't have to teach them. They'll be learning and teaching themselves, and they'll be constructing this mathematical proficiency beyond what we had ever thought that we could do. And they'll be doing it with real items and real quantities, and they'll be able to pull together these three aspects of number and develop this conceptual place value understandings, again, that can never be taken away from them. It will be much more deeper than what we could have ever taught them. I want you to think about, there's some Twitter hashtags in hashtag counting collections and choral counting and talk math with your kids. So if you want some ideas, I would encourage you to search on Twitter some ideas about counting or how you could count objects. And I wanted this picture here with this little preschooler here. He's organizing his collections on a picture of hands. And I think how genius is that to begin with what we are already organically, we keep track of our count with, and we organize our count by our fingers. And so that is something that I hadn't thought of before that I definitely want to add to my toolbox for younger kids, for preschoolers or kindergartners, that we can have them organize a collection in something that's familiar to them. I'm not down in 10 frames. We can move to 10 frames, but how neat is this, that something that's really going to make sense to them, because we ask them to use their fingers all the time. Again, this is a little girl. She's counting collection in a Pringles jar. And if you'll notice, this was very recent because she has a mask on, and she's recording in her journal how she's keeping track of her count and counting. And then these are kids outside. And so the kids had the opportunity. They went outside for a mask break and then brought these leaves back in, and they're keeping track and showing you how they're counting their leaves and recording them. So I just want to encourage you to share these ideas with us. I would be interested in how you're using counting collections and choral counting in your class. Does anybody have any questions or comments?
Julie, I wouldn't mind even actually doing later on a book study with this. I'm trying to do it with my children right now, those that are in person and virtual, and I find it very interesting.
Yes, it is. And also there's a school-wide count, right, that you can do. And I'm interested in that as well. I'm thinking about today, we only had 30 minutes, so I just had to gloss over some big ideas and concepts, but definitely think about delving in even from the intermediate grades as well.
We can count through graduate school, like, because we can count big numbers, and we can count fractions, and we can count integers. We can keep counting.
And it's a great way for kids to make sense of their learning.